just prepare an inch or two of the seal and expose the glue, and then offer it into position as best you can. It's a bit tricky, but what you've got there is just an inch or so of the seal in place. Once you've got an inch or two started, just feed the seal into the channel at the same time pulling the tape off the glue. So you're very carefully just working it around with your fingers and not doing too much at any one time. It's a bit fiddly, and we've actually leaned the tumble dryer at a good 45 degrees to give us a good shot of this, and it's also gives you a decent working position to feed that seal in. So just keep feeding it in. That's a great shot, that, Kev. Just keep feeding it in and pulling the tape off as you go round, nice and gently, and don't rush. So just continuing with that technique, just keep feeding the seal in, push it in with one finger, keep pulling the tape off. It's a bit tricky, but if you set yourself up properly to do this, it's not that difficult. And getting back up to the end, where if you've done it right, both ends will meet. And they do. There you go, that's the tape fitted, stuck in place. Okay, all the paper is removed, and that's one new seal fitted and ready for use. On the top, the new bearing pad, and down below, the worn one. You may not have think it was worn, but this just shows you it's a great example. Refitting the bearing pad, make sure that the edges get tucked under. Not very easy to video this bit, but you get the idea. And once the new pad is in place, it stands proud because of the newness of it. Okay? Once all your bearing pads are refitted, that's the seal and pads all in place, and we're ready to offer up a drum. To refit the drum, you may find it easier to lay the machine on its face, protect it properly, put a cushion, towel, anything you've got, a blanket, just to protect the whole machine. Fit the drum in place, having already cleaned the leading edge, and get all that tar deposits off. Get your drum, offer it into place, and just give it a turn. Yeah, and that's it seated correctly. This heating element is absolutely knackered, as you can see, and we're about to show you how to change it. Bear in mind we have already stripped this machine quite a bit, but to attempt this you would have to remove the heat panel, which is covering the bearings and the heater and the back of the condenser. We did that earlier. Once that removed, you'll be able to see this heater, but to get to the plug of the heater you'll definitely have to have these screws on this side, and along the bottom there they'll have to be disconnected. The drum is also under tension from the belt. In this instance we've got it disconnected at the motor end. To remove the rear plug off the heater, just prise open the back plate, put your hand inside and undo those plugs, and then move your hand and let the pressure off the plate. To remove this plug, there's a couple of little latch lugs on each side. With a small screwdriver you can release them, and pull on the plug, and the plug will eventually just come clear of the back panel like that. Next bit straightforward, just a couple of screws hold the element in place. And that's the element free. Okay, to fit the newer element, it actually clips into place with little protrusions that are on the element, and Kev will fit it now. So that end slides in. There's a hook just where Kev's finger is now. Put the hook in, push it down and locate the lower one, and then there's just one screw to put back in to hold it tight. When you're refitting the electrical plug into the back panel, just have a look at these two clips. Just zoom in so you can see them. That's them there, and that's the way it goes. Push it in and it clips into place. Prise the back panel away and you can refit the plugs from the back. Bit fiddly because you can't get in very well, but just persevere and they will go in. Push them home nice and tight. Removing the rear bearing is straightforward, just 4 screws to undo. They don't very often wear out these bearings, but if they do, this is how to replace it. Just mark the bearing position and with a screwdriver just a scratch and remove the bearing. To refit, just a reverse. Put your 4 screws in. And at this point we'd refit the circlip and that'll be the bearing finished. Put the washer on and then carefully put your circuit clip in place. Be careful it doesn't spring away from you. And that's it, one bearing replaced and put back in, just on top of replacing that heater element. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is refit the drive belt. First thing to do when you're refitting the belt is look at the mark where the belt has been for years and locate your new belt in line with that mark. When in place, the belt looks like that. We're going to take it off and refit it for you. As you can see, the belt doesn't appear to be long enough to get onto the pulley. When you've got a brand new belt, you do need to stretch it onto the pulley because there's no means and no mechanisms for tensioning the belt during use. We use a special tool for fitting the belts and it's not available to the average DIY person, but basically there's a slot in a movable piece here. We'll actually fit the belt into the slot and using the leverage of the bar stretch the belt and then move it forward and locate the belt onto the pulley. We can then spin our tool and remove it, leaving the belt either on the pulley or almost on the pulley, depending on the length of the pulley. And if you just watch, we'll show you how we do that. So that looked quite simple, and with the correct tool it is. You won't have this tool, but you could use some copper pipe to put over the shaft of the motor put the belt onto the pipe and then lever the pipe downwards and slide your belt onto the motor shaft. Leave it up to you to invent different ways to do it. Another one would be with a Tommy bar and a socket, and use the Tommy bar to stretch the belt. All in all, it's a tough job to fit the belt, but it's not impossible if you think about it. Now we've got to this stage, we're just going to start to refit all the screws in the back and rebuild the machine. Okay, you've got your pipes to refit from the pump up to the water collector, so feed them through. Bit fiddly. Put your top two pipes back on, just push them home. Once you've got them in, there's just one clamp to hold them there, just one screw in the clamp. There's another clamp further down where they go through the body of the machine, just one screw there. And the two pipes are now connected to the pump housing. Okay, so we need to completely rebuild the back, fit in the vents and the panels, the protection strip for the water pipes, so we'll get on with that now. Just make sure you refit all the screws, so rebuild the machine, and this panel that we're fitting now has to be screwed home correctly because the airflow, especially the hot air, is in that one. That's it, that's the back panels all fitted, no screws missing, and it's important you put short screws where the short screws come out from. The air vent at the back of the motor, those 6 screws are short ones. And finally, don't forget to re-plug the electrical contacts in. Most important, you go brown to brown, blue to blue, and the earth must be connected. Okay? And the next step is to refit the lid, and then we can test the dryer.